Everyone, welcome Mr. Todd Medford to Mastering Military Life. This is a special edition PCSing to Fort Leavenworth. And we are talking about some of the crazy obstacles that we are seeing at Fort Leavenworth, not only for 2026, but just in general, because it's such a special place to live for such a short period of time. And Todd, I'm so excited to have you today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Todd, can you give what's your background? Like, how long were you in? How long were you at Leavenworth? And how long have you been helping people relocate there?
So I was in the Army for 22 and a half years, field artillery, and Fort Leavenworth was my last assignment for my last 4 years. I retired in 2016 and then started working as an Army civilian for 6 more years. And it was during that time in 2018 that Ari and I decided to get licensed. And really because we know and understand the military lifestyle, that helping families PCS into Fort Leavenworth kind of became a priority for us. And it's become our passion, especially helping military families build wealth through real estate.
Yes, because Leavenworth is such an interesting spot. And let's talk a little bit about kind of the decision to rent versus buy because people are only stationed there for such a short period of time. So talk to me a little bit about kind of how this is different than typical duty stations.
So Fort Leavenworth it's very unique in terms of most people think of Fort Leavenworth and the prisons. So there is a military police brigade here that is responsible for not only providing services to the installation, but they also manage the Joint Regional Confinement Facility as well as the United States Disciplinary Barracks. So there's actually two prisons on post. One is generally for less than 5 years. The other one is for more than 5 years, serious crimes. So there is that piece of active duty unit that is here. The rest of it is really a training installation. And the biggest thing that is here used to be the Combined Arms Center as a three-star command. It oversaw what they call the centers of excellence at different installations. But the biggest thing that that Fort Leavenworth is also known for is the Command and General Staff Officer course, which is an 11-month course that starts about the second week of August, runs through June. So most of the officers that come to CGSC are here for about 11 months. They start arriving in July, and then they usually graduate about the second week of June. So what makes it really unique is the fact that they're only here for a year. So most people, they would prefer to either live on post, but there's limited housing on post because not only do they have to support the student population, but they also have to support the permanent party that's here. And so then that starts pushing families out into the economy, which Leavenworth, Lansing, combined are only about 50,000. We are kind of like the northwest suburb of Kansas City. And so the installation sits right on the Missouri River. So it's less than a half mile from the front gate to Missouri. So there's options whether to live in Kansas or Missouri. So with the fact that it's only about an 11-month course for a large population here, it really brings up the question, do I rent? Do I live on post or do I buy? And what we've seen is just a matter of opinion or preference. For some people are like, I'm only living on post. Some are like, I'm never living on post. And some are, there's a turnover here every year. So I'm going to buy, I'm going to live in it, then I'm going to rent it out.
Yeah, you see a tremendous amount of people say, hey, I see that people come in every single year and do this exact same thing. So I'm going to use this to benefit me and my family and invest in my BAH into a mortgage. So, and then ultimately rent it out to another military family. And that's the kind of trend that you're seeing.
It is. And the number of clients that we've worked with that they bought when they came through CGSE 20, 30 years ago, they've held on to it as an investment property this entire time. And then they've decided to sell because either they were moving out of the area or they just wanted to do something different with their money. But we saw a slowdown over the last couple of years as interest rates went up because it is an officer heavy installation. And therefore, most of the rentals are based on officer BAH. And so, landlords typically set rents in close proximity to the BAH, but it's for those that are able to, it's a pretty good investment opportunity for them because they know it's going to be rented out every year.
So I think it would probably make the rental market even more crazy because it does take someone with a certain money psychology to say, hey, I'm going to buy here, right? They see the big picture. So I would imagine it makes the rental market pretty crazy and the landlords are very aware what the BAHs is, so you're going to get right up there. What is it like when you're buying? Do the buyers have a little bit of leverage right now to kind of get some closing costs paid for? Like what communities are people looking at?
So for about the last 6 to 8 months, we have seen switch to it feeling like a buyer's market, even though when you look at the metrics, it's still technically a strong seller's market because we've been in the upper 2.6 to 2.8 months of supply, which when you look at the scale, that has us in a seller's market. But because our inventory has been so low in recent years, it feels much more like a buyer's market. So what we've been able to see is buyers come in at or below asking do their inspections, get repairs made, and still in some cases be able to ask for concessions, whether it's closing costs or rate buy down to help with it. Right outside the gate is obviously Leavenworth. Just south of that is Lansing. And then, despite being a suburb of Kansas City, we're actually really kind of a rural area. So there's a lot of green space between Leavenworth, Lansing, and then you get down to Baser. As you move a little bit further south, Tonganoxie, the Piper area in Kansas City, Kansas. And then across the river, you've got Weston, which is a quirky, quaint little town, Platte City, which is over near the airport, and then Parkville. We do have some that'll make the 40-minute to an hour drive to live a little bit further south in Johnson County, so down near Shawnee, Overland Park areas. And we do have some, especially like if the spouse maybe works in the city or near the city, that do opt to live down in Kansas City.
And so there's also something interesting happening this year that you guys are seeing because of the FIFA World Cup. And just so you guys know, I'm against creating time-sensitive content. So this was very strange for me to reach out to Todd today. You brought this to my attention. I was like, we have to talk about this. So in 2026, one of the major hosts for the World Cup is Kansas City, and this is creating a huge issue for our incoming class of 2026. Can you expand on what you're seeing more?
Yeah, so Kansas City is set to host, I think it's 6, maybe 7 games, covering over about a month time frame. And in doing so, they're also trying to host 4 of the teams. And one that was just confirmed this week is Argentina. So they have a massive following, especially when you consider someone like Messi is going to be based out of Kansas City. And we were just hearing last night that Argentina has confirmed, and apparently they've rented out an entire hotel for the time that they're here. So what we're starting to see, the impact of this is for short-term rentals. There are several cities around here or communities that weren't allowing short-term rentals that have softened their stance on it for the World Cup. So they're going to allow more short-term rentals, especially if they didn't have any for this summer. But what we're seeing is the effect on those is some people that might be renting their house out otherwise are opting to try and take the income, the short-term income over the long term, and support or provide lodging for the World Cup. And so what we're seeing is that based on the stats I saw earlier this week, right now, short-term rentals are up about 30% from what they normally are, and hotels are up about 300% from what they are.
In terms of pricing?
In terms of pricing for a per night basis.
Oh,
so especially when you consider, so Argentina's already committed. In consideration is the Netherlands, England, and Algeria. So we could potentially have 4 countries that host out of Kansas City. And in meetings we've been in with the Kansas City FIFA 26 crew, they've talked about out up to 3 hours away from Kansas City, we could expect to have people. So as far west as Salina, as far north as Omaha, as far south as Wichita, and then as far east as like Lake of the Ozarks, they will be staying there because their teams are basing out of here. They're playing a game or 2 here, and they'll make that drive for the day to come in for the games and then stay and enjoy the area.
Wow. So then are you advising military families right now? Because essentially it's creating a like crash course, right? Like they're on a crash collision with one another.
It is because it's right in it overlaps almost perfectly when our summer cycle comes in. So we will start seeing international officers that come in mid to late June, and then some of the specialty branches that'll come in at the end of June, beginning July. And then from July through the beginning of August, there's like a weekly plan for if you're coming from overseas with kids, you come in this week. Overseas or CONUS with kids, you come in this week. And then it just works its way down through the list for what their scheduled report dates are. So we've already been having conversations with incoming families that, hey, if you're looking for a rental, you need to start reaching out now. The property managers are confirming who's staying, who's going, and what availability they'll have. They have their schedule they do it on. And so for the families coming in, trying to get a rental locked in now is key for beating the competition as it gets closer.
Yeah, so getting in sooner. I'm guessing that some of those families are going to be stuck not renting, right? So here's the thing that we talk about all the time in military life. Most people don't buy because they want to buy, right? We talk about the romanticism of investing in a property and all these things, but sometimes that comes out of well, we don't have other options, so now we bought an investment property, right? And it turns out to be something great. But the other advice here is that you guys start getting tapped in early, because if there's no base housing and there's no rentals, you may need to look into buying. And if there needs to be some sort of repair to the credit or anything like that to make it possible, I mean, the sooner that we can get tapped in and help and support you, the better, right?
Exactly. So anybody that's coming this summer looking to buy, need to be talking with a lender now, getting through the pre-approval, like you said, if you've got any credit repair that you need to do, or just making sure that you're pre-approved so that you're ready to go if you do find something that you want to go under or make an offer on. Because a lot of times if we can do our military matchmaking program. It may be somebody who's leaving May, June, July timeframe that we can go ahead and get under contract and either have a long escrow period, or we may close early and have a rent back or something, but ideally try to find a win-win situation that supports both sides of the transaction.
I think this is the perfect use of the military matchmaker program because I didn't know this, but when what we're looking for is like incoming families who are leaving, connecting them with families who are buying. But also when it comes to VA assumable loans, if you are a service member assuming a loan for a service member, it actually releases the previous service member's entitlement. And this is something that we're not talking about enough because there's a big conversation around, well, if it gets locked into the house, it gets stuck. Well, only if the person who's buying it doesn't have an entitlement of their own, guys. So this is kind of that perfect situation where people are leaving Leavenworth, right? There's going to be a frenzy around rentals. Base housing is always a jam, unfortunately, there. But this is a good time if you're looking for other options to get plugged in early. Todd and Lori obviously working with a number of people who are already leaving Leavenworth, and they leave around that time frame. So tap in and see what's available for you and your family, because waiting is not your friend right now. You have to be, when something like this happens, we got to be like 10 times more proactive.
Yeah, and we have some families that are here local that may be looking to relocate somewhere else, and their house will probably be available within the next 30 days or so. Others that are trying to target mid-June that they may have an assumable loan, and others that are pushing out a little bit closer to June. So we do have the gamut from February, March timeframe through June, July that we're looking at with some of our sellers that would be great opportunities for some of the incoming families.
Yeah, I would imagine people are like, look, we get there in June, so like, why would I look now? And it's like, well, you should tap in now because we have people leaving in June, right? And so just don't assume that waiting is your best friend here, guys. Get tapped in early. Opportunities come to those who are available to receive them. And if you haven't found a house yet, like it's time to get connected and start going through that process. Todd, anything else that someone should know before PCSing to Leavenworth beyond the FIFA?
So the biggest thing around here probably is that you do have options between Missouri and Kansas. There are differences, especially when it comes to employment. If you're wanting to be closer to the airport or closer to the city, you may want to be on the Missouri side. We do have a difference in property taxes on both sides. So the best thing is to get in touch with somebody who understands, knows the areas, and can talk you through helping you decide as you look at the board aspect, family, where do you want to live? Do schools matter? Is a spouse going to work outside the home? And what you want to do for recreation and what your dreams are, and kind of take a look at it from there so we can advise you on what your best options might be.
I love that. Well, guys, if you're listening to this episode and you're heading to Leavenworth, do me a favor and go into the show notes, click the links below. We have links to PCS Pay for Leavenworth that's supported by Todd and Lori. And we also have their Savvy Homebuyer group who's educating you on different areas that you can buy and what to expect in terms of the real estate market there, as well as a link to their PCS plan. So you can get like a personalized support in starting to look at what your options are at Leavenworth. So Todd, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it.